Chair, I want to repeat the thanks I just gave to Jonathan because I haven't really seen him give that presentation before, and I like that. Thank you very much. And thank you all for being here again, especially to Yaki. This partnership between ISS and the Pardee Center and International Futures, I think is pretty close, from my point of view, to an ideal partnership, not just in terms of the interpersonal relationships that we've developed, but obviously in terms of the ability to work with ISS, the tremendous depth of expertise, and the absolutely wonderful reputation that ISS has, not just across Africa, but really around the world. When I talk to my colleagues in the United States about this partnership, they are impressed. So that really serves us extremely well, and thank you for that. And thank you also, Faru, for this week with DIRCO and PRAO. It has been a wonderful week to have this ability to interact with your colleagues and with you throughout the week. I think we are developing our capabilities here for looking at African futures in the context of the global developments, transformations that Jonathan was talking about. It's really unique. And of course the British High Commission for making this all possible. We appreciate that very, very much. I want to talk about something fairly briefly because I want to turn it back to Jonathan, who's got still more interesting things to show you, and to Aaron. But let me talk just a little bit about the Pardee Center and the International Futures Project generally. The Pardee Center is at something called the Joseph Corbell School of International Studies, one of the, I think it's safe to say, one of the premier international studies institutions in the United States at the University of Denver. As Yaki has suggested, we've been working on this system that you're looking at, the results on, for over 30 years, and that we are focused on looking at the integrated global change environment, and we're focused on thinking about alternative futures. As our logo said back on that first page, we try to explore the future. We try to understand where we are and where we might be going. We use that as a foundation for trying to facilitate efforts to and be involved in activities that shape a better future and bring that about. We have worked with institutions like the United Nations Environmental Program. We participated in their Global Environment Outlook #4. We've worked with the United Nations Development Program and the Human Development Report Office. We contributed scenarios to the 2011 report that came out not terribly long ago. We're beginning to work also on research foundations for the 2012 report. We've worked in projects with the European Commission, and as Jonathan suggested, with the U.S. National Intelligence Council and others. But we're trying to get this tool out there and make it available for those who can benefit from it. We are also producing a series of volumes. Those volumes have been focused on patterns of potential human progress. Volumes that are out so far are on global poverty, global education, global health, trying to improve the human condition through analyses that we contribute. We have forthcoming volumes on infrastructure and governance. Jonathan has already introduced you to major trends, major transformations that are going on, and there are some big stories that I just want to reinforce some of the things that he's already said. To begin with, there is a major transition going on, as he's talked about, at what we sometimes call the global high table. The global high table in recent decades, actually through much of the 20th century, has consisted of bipolar relationships, U.S., Soviet Union, a fleeting period of U.S. hegemony, it's sometimes called, or as the French have referred to it, U.S. as a hyperpower. And we're seeing something emerging that is going to be a new multipolarity. The three powers that Jonathan talked about, the U.S., India and China, but obviously a fourth power in the European Commission, not European Commission, European Union. These actors are going to be recreating something that we haven't almost seen for a century around the world, and it's rising very rapidly. I sometimes have this picture in my mind of this table with four partners around it. Hopefully they're partners. even if a couple, three of them have to be pushed up in wheelchairs because of the aging that Jonathan talked about. It's a different kind of image of the high table than we've had before, but picture it in your mind. I think it will stick there. Now, in addition to that, of course, we've got the bigger high table. We've got the G20 and the rise of the BRICS, the emerging states, as identified by Goldman Sachs. They were focused primarily on economic vitality as opposed necessarily to global power, because some of the BRICS and some of the next 11 are quite small, but together this transformation is not small at all. It's very, very large. In addition to that high table story, we have stories going on around major issue patterns. And for me, some of the stories are the ones, again, that Jonathan is trying to highlight for you. The demographic story, the aging of global populations, moving into no man's land. The human development story, and he rightly is emphasizing the tremendous inertia of this. This is such a good news story. We really should not lose touch with this. Education advance around the world has tremendous momentum. The movement towards universal primary education, now the big push that's beginning to occur for widespread, if not universal, basic education, that is to say primary plus lower secondary, that has momentum that almost nothing is going to stop. Not the Great Recession, not power relationships. That momentum is reshaping the world. Right now, Africa has an average education years for its population of 25 and above of almost 5 years, which is up considerably from a few years ago. It's still way low compared to the 11 years of European Union countries on average, but it's advancing steadily, and even fairly rapidly. Life expectancy, with obviously interruptions like those caused by HIV/AIDS, is also advancing steadily around the world. That human development story, huge momentum, big inertia. Social development, lots to do there. Democratic deficits, as we refer to them, democracy levels way below what they should be in terms of development, particularly in many of the MENA countries. Governance quality, corruption deficits. There are issues that need to be addressed. There are also ongoing fiscal imbalances and economic imbalances in the system around trade, current accounts, exchange rates. Those are going to take a long time to address. And then the new transitions, the movement really from focusing on development problems, they were going to remain issues for us, to focusing on new issue problems, the new vulnerabilities, energy, water, food, the environment. And this will all help us with this kind of project that we're engaged in, mutually analyze risk and opportunity. That's what I think we are about in this enterprise. Now, how do we do this? Well, we use a tool. We use a tool called International Futures. And that tool begins in some way with demography, because it's about people. We have to have a model that represents the global population. And we have such a model. It is as sophisticated, I believe, and I'm going to be immodest here, it's as sophisticated as any population forecasting model that the UN has, or the IASA and Austria has. It represents the population by age and sex for 183 countries, and it is, I want to say this very clearly, it's available to all of you to use. You can download it, you can get access to it. But that's only one part of our system. We also have an economic model. An economic model represents the supply and demand interaction in these 183 economies, and it is also one of the more well-developed and extensive models of its kind out there. We also have a model on education. We can't represent this transformation, and Aaron is going to show you more on this in not too terribly long. And without such a model, we have a model that on health. We have actually probably the only major forecasting model available that represents the change in communicable diseases, chronic diseases, and accidents, injuries across these countries. And as was suggested already, we're seeing a major transformation occur here between communicable disease patterns and chronic kinds of disease, old age kinds of patterns. Within 10 years, 10 years from now, we are going to see in Africa more deaths from chronic diseases and injuries combined, injuries and accidents combined, than we will see from communicable diseases. That's a different image than most of us have of Africa. We also have an infrastructure model which is under development, but is fairly far along, and we are planning to have a volume within a year or so on that. We are working on domestic governance issues and have a sub-model for that. We have one on international politics. We have one on energy. We have one on agriculture. We have representations of technology and environmental elements. And perhaps most importantly, all of these are linked. All of these help us study the interactions among these things. You can't study economics without studying demographics. You can't study education and health without studying economics and demography and so on. So these are the things that we're trying to relate to each other. These are kind of some of the, in summary and in conclusion really, these are some of the design elements and desired characteristics of the system. The model has 183 countries. It's integrated in multiple issue across these categories. For some issues like population change and environmental change, global greenhouse gases, we look out as far as 2100. We also focus more nearer term. It's deeply data-based, well over 2,000 data series. It's also theory-based, and all of these are linked. Not everything is perfect. Far from it. There is no such thing as a perfect model. A model is a simplified representation of reality. It's always full of errors. It's always full of simplifications and misrepresentations. We have to use them cautiously. We have to use them in a recognition of these weaknesses. But some of the things we're trying to do to make this even a stronger tool, besides working on the models themselves, are to make it as user-friendly as possible, to develop scenario analysis tools to make it more user-friendly. And as Yaki said at the very beginning, it's accessible, available, you can download it, and we try to make it as transparent and open as we can. I think I'm going to stop right there. I've said probably more than enough. Let me turn it back to Jonathan to actually lead you in and show you more about this tool.